Hello everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party and my buddy Rhett back there. She already got her nut from our previous video. I did my completely stalled out 3JS video, which I've completely sort of gotten stalled because it's like all the okay. So when I say because of it, sort of, if you're an English speaker from the United States, you probably generally we will say because of as a blame. There's like, oh, I was late because of. We're blaming. We're in a blaming mode. I don't know if it's like that in other parts of the world and in other languages, but um, I do not mean this in a blaming sort of mentality. I am sort of stalled out in that application because of unit testing. And the reason is the blame is in that it keeps exposing sort of parts of my brain, gaps in my understanding, that I then spend hours and hours and hours sort of contemplating and trying to understand and trying to find the best way to or the best way to improve my skill set, I guess. So, it's like the unit tests have turned in that whole thing has just turned into sort of like, hey, I'm going to write a bunch of code and then I'm just going to do a deep dive analysis of like how I could improve that code and stuff like that. That's sort of what that whole show has evolved into, and the reason it has evolved into that is because of unit tests, and it's because unit tests really highlight individual units of code, and there's so many thousands and thousands of units of code and all that. And I found a lot of improvements and all that, but this application is moving so much faster, and it has all the problems that I found in the other one, but it works perfectly fine. So it's like that's just something to think about. I believe we're all done with continuous, and we only have one last feature to do. So I was thinking that we'd be done I thought this is where I would be putting like a stake in the ground or flag into the ground and saying, hey, this is a complete project. But there was one other sort of thing that I wanted to sort of dig into, and that is the concept of grammars. So in voice, we have this we can create like a little sentence, or we can configure it to have a set of words that are specific that it's looking out for. And I don't know exactly how that manifests once you've set it up, how it ends up working. My guess is at this point is that if I have a so let me change this to English, and if I have a grammar set up and I say the word red, which is a color in American English, but it's also a verb, a past tense verb that you read something, right? It has multiple meanings with the same exact word from a verbal perspective, but it has two meanings. And there's a word for that. Um, let's go. And this is like exploring. So we're talking domain, and then there's sort of three kinds of domains going on here. There's the domain of language specifically, which, like, if you want to be able to communicate in this whole thing, you need to understand the domain of language. There's also the domain of um, the voice API, and that's kind of what I started off on. The whole concept of grammars and all that is the domain of the voice API, and then there's the domain of JavaScript browser, Angular, all that stuff. And so right now we're focusing on the domain of language. And so in English, the spoken word read and read, past tense. And then, oh, there's a good example. So read and read, past tense and post tense is completely content, or and past and present tense are completely contentious. They're spelled the same way, but it depends on the context of how it's used. So If you're reading, if you're about to read something or you're reading something, it's read. But if you read something, it's read, and it's spelled the exact same way. Tense sound the same. So I'm just putting a little fact. So I kind of like, there was a TV show called Cheers, and there was this guy named Clive, I think was his name, and he was a mailman, and he would always sit at the bar, and any time if you said anything around him, he would just spout off a bunch of facts about it. That's kind of like what ChatGPT does. So I'm saying in English, the spoken word read and read past tense sound the same. And I put a question mark, are pronounced the same, but both rhyme with bed and said. They are homophones, I think is how we normally say it. It might be homophones, but I think it's homophones. They have the same sound in different meanings. Now, I'm always I've heard this before. Are there words that are spelled the same, but pronounced differently based on meaning? Yes, absolutely. They're called heteronyms. It is so weird that the homo and hetero are on these. Spelled the same but pronounced differently depending on their meaning or participle. So yeah, so tear and tear is a good one. Lead and lead. So you could have a lead could be lead could be to guide or be in charge, but lead is so lead is to guide or be in charge, but lead is a type of metal. Tear is, but they're spelled the same. Um, Bass and bass. That's a one is like a guitar type of instrument, and one is a fish, and they're spelled the exact same. Wind and wind. So yeah, we got tons of them, tons of them. So we have both examples of like words that sound the same. We say them the same. So red and red, but they're spelled differently, and you know based on their context. And then we have words that are spelled the same but sound different based on their context. So that's something you kind of have to keep in mind on. And I think that is, you don't normally have to worry about stuff like that, but if you're going to work in the domain of voice, it's something that you have to take into um, into account. So so I am working with the Sound API browser, and do grammars help with issues like read, like, so if I am trying to collect colors, if I add list of grammars that are colors, will it help with the issue of red versus red? And I'm guessing that, so there's two things. Okay, so yes, so at this point, what you're so the thing is what I believe what ChatGPT typically does in this situation is tells you what the intentions were. And so, and this is a bit validating for me, because now I can say, oh, okay, so this is what I think they're for, and this is what their intention was. Um, uh, so it says can improve accuracy. Um, is there? Um, Are you aware of how effective it is? So if I give a grammar of red, can I be assured that it will never return red? So now I'm asking about the practical aspects. Like, does it actually work, and how often does it work? Is this like a solid rule that you can absolutely count on, or is this like, it helps? It may help. And then more importantly, like, or the thing I really want to stress is that this whole thing that I'm doing right now was never an effort issue 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Like, this is a new issue. This is a new novel issue of writing code that does not consistently behave the same way. It's no code has become completely unreliable when it comes to, like, hey, today if I type in things into this device, it does something, and tomorrow if I type in the same things, it'll do the same thing. No, we can no longer rely on that. And that is something that we as computer programmers have to sort of adapt to. Like the world, the foundational structures of what we used to depend on are going away fast, and we are going to have, there's still going to be need for people to do this stuff, but like the things that we used to be able to count on, we will not be able to count on anymore. And here's a speech strongly influenced, but they do not guarantee absolute control. Yeah, see, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, yeah, and then and this is probably going to vary from whether. Um, so it says Chrome, really. I guess it's not. So now you can not be 100%. Okay, so it would have been very easy to say, oh, okay, I can set up reds and we'll never have to worry about this again. And you could report that up to the line to the boss, and the boss can hear that and he can report that to his boss, and they can report it all the way up to the line. And then when you set it up, it doesn't work. And this did not used to be a reality. And we're on the ground level. If you're a computer programmer and you're a developer, you're on the ground level of this sea change. This is a sea change. This has changed. It did not be like that. It was not. It did not be like that. It was not like that. It was not. If you are a new developer and you've been coding for 3 years, it's been like that your entire career. If you report to someone who is recording was developing 10 years ago, but they've been a manager like the last 8 years, they have never experienced this. It is going to be so hard for you to communicate to your boss that no, code doesn't work the way it used to work. And to communicate it in such a way that doesn't make you look like a complete jerk to them is going to be difficult. Um, so, yeah, yeah, what you can do. So, you can definitely use this and set up your grammars and all that, but then you can also, like, what they call like whitelist. You could say, hey, these are the only words that we will accept. Or you could blacklist. You could say, no, there's we know that there's some problematic words, and we will exclude them. You know, so those are the two sort of things. Now, just to be clear, there are individuals in the U.S. I don't know if it's like this around the world, that get very, very triggered by the whitelist and blacklist words. And so, you might want to be careful when you use those. Um, so, so I have heard of only allowing. I would love to know what the really good, proper, non non-triggering words for this would be, that only allowing. And I think whitelist is in reference to, like, when you write with black, with some sort of ink that is typically blue or black, sometimes red. And if there's a white background, you can see everything. But if there's a black background, you if they used especially if they used black text, you can't see it. I believe that that is where the sort of the basis of those words are. But allowing some words in is called whitelisting, and disallowing some words is called blacklisting. What are okay, allow list and block list. Okay, yeah, and you know what? I do feel like these are better words. Allow. We're going to create a allow list. We are going to create a block list. So yeah, I like that a lot better. I'm going to try to remember that. I definitely feel like that is the right direction. All right. So the way I want to do this is I want to be able to, when you click this, I want comma delimited words. So in with grammars, setting up grammars. And I will say that this is probably a really good example of something that if if there are improvements to if they move forward on the voice API with the browser and all that, probably the way you set up grammars and how like you probably will be able to set up grammars and you'll be able to say like only allow, like all like be strict adherence to this, or give preference to, like you'll probably have ability to control. Like there's so many things that they could do to improve this API that will in all likelihood be very breaking changes. When setting up grammars, allow spaces in words. So like heavy metal. Okay, so basically now I'm finally to the, okay, so you put pipes in here. So rock, heavy metal. So that's how you do grammars, right? You set up a little string like this, and then I think this genres is like not, like doesn't actually do anything, and then and all that. So I am curious if genre actually does actually. So maybe I need to add that to actually do anything. Okay, so it is purely symbolic. Now that probably will not always be the case, but that's how it is now. And well, it'll always be the case if the application doesn't, if this API doesn't ever grow from where it's at. Like if they abandon it, they're like, yeah, we don't ever need voice in the browser. Then and they just sort of let it sit where it's at, and then they just happen to let the API stay static. Yeah, I guess. Um, and my understanding is you can set up different grammars. Like you could be like, oh, this is fruits. This is um, all that. So I'm just gonna say I don't. I feel like if I have this in my code, where they can set up the grammar and then they can set up the whatever this is, uh, that that it will imply that it does something, and I don't want to imply. I don't want this tool implying that it does stuff that things happen that don't happen. So, anyways, okay. So that is. I feel like anytime I try to do something special, I don't really understand it. I do spend some time on the actual subject matter domain. And so I just did that. That in like in a corporate environment, that is typically an example of like you would normally do something like that. Uh, it like you would have a meeting with like people called like subject matter experts, and it's always a good idea to sort of like read up as much as you can before the meeting, just so you can have good useful questions so that you can understand. Now the problem and the frustration that I normally have in a lot of these meetings is a lot of people, probably the majority of people these days, um, aren't actually like they don't even understand why you're in the subject matter meeting. So they tend to, a lot of people tend to think that those meetings are really more about like showing that you're an active participant in meetings, and so that you would be well suited for promotion. Um, and so you can end up with like a lot of people just trying to, you could end up with these meetings tend to devolve into just like word salad meetings where like nobody knows what anybody's saying, but they're all acting like they know what they're saying. Um, and it's really tough because anybody like subject matter experts, they definitely want to, um, they're in the same boat. Like everyone's trying to get promoted and stuff. So the subject matter experts exactly in the same boat. So they'll often say, "Oh, that's such a good question," even though like it was a question that is complete gibberish. And then they'll kind of put out a bunch of gibberish too. And then you're so like if you're in there actually trying to do work, trying to move the application forward, it is very easy to get very frustrated and be like, "You guys are just completely wasting time here." But the thing is you will look real bad if you do that. So, and unfortunately, there is just a true reality that perception is reality. So if you are perceived as someone that does and a lot of times, if especially if there's already good questions being asked, and a lot of times they'll ask you for the questions up front, and if you want the questions to be answered, um, you'll you'll just quietly listen. And unfortunately, the perception, if you quietly listen in that circumstance, is that you are not interacting and that you are not participating, even if you were the one that wrote all the questions up front. Um, and then so it's important to a um, and as a matter of fact, what will typically happen is if you do present questions up front, and then and you really want to understand what the answers are, you can generally look pretty good if you are like refocus. So like let's say they're answering a question, and then someone asks them another question, and they sort of get completely sidetracked. If you're like, okay, yeah, I did understand this and that, and I just wanted to say, like, is it okay if I parrot what I think that means back, because I'm not 100%? And then you kind of parrot it back to them and all that, and then say, well, okay, so then there's one little piece I didn't understand, and then you can, and that is probably a really good approach to actually getting what you want done and looking good to management. Now, as someone who has literally never, ever, not one time in my career, I've had a very sort of lot of big wins, a career with a lot of stuff, a lot of things like just really impressive things that I've done over my career. I've literally, one thing I have never done over my career is ever get promoted. I've never been promoted a single time. And I have been demoted a few times. I've been demoted like from architect to regular developer, to senior developer a couple of times. Uh, so, um, so as someone like that, I can't really give good advice on how to get. And I have seen plenty of people that have never ever coded it, had a single successful coding, like they've never coded anything successfully in their entire career, get promoted and get really promoted to very high places. Um, so like I am definitely like not giving you any. I don't think I'm giving you any advice that's going to get you promoted, but I might be giving you advice that will prevent you from being completely like fired. And that's about the best I can do for you. But anyway, so we did our dip into um, our subject matter domain research, and the goal is to create um, grammars. And it, to me, it seems like the best way to create grammars, just from like a web perspective, will be to add a text area that is. I wonder if there's a reason. Is there a reason that they delimit based on pipes, not commas? Pipes. Okay, so I'm trying to build a UI, and I think that people are more comfortable with commas than pipes. But I would like to but I am trying to determine if there is a mistake, if there is a downside to using commas. Like, is there a phrase that someone might want as a grammar that has a comma in it? Okay, so it actually looks like, yes, there are phrases you might want to include in speech grammars that contain commas, especially if you're accepting multi-word phrases or natural speech patterns. Okay. Oh yeah, that is true. I didn't even think about that. Okay, so we might actually want red, comma, white, comma, and blue as a grammar. Yes, please, as a. Okay. All right. So that is actually a really good way. One phrase per line. I feel like, yeah, that's actually a better way to do that. Actually, that's exactly what I want to do. I just think map piping is not going to be as useful. I mean, I'm not trying to be user friendly. That's not part of this. Well, okay, so I guess it would make sense. You know what? Actually, I guess it makes sense to do pipes. This is not a consumer sort of product. This is a developer product. It probably will save them some mental cycles. Anyone who is trying to use this as a developer, some mental cycles if they have to pipe separate. Um, that's one less thing, and it'll save me in the future. So I guess I'm going to go with pipe separated. All right, so that is, again, we dip back into that, and now we're trying to figure out where in the code we're actually working on this. And the easiest way, I think, because I know this isn't like language, like I don't have I'm not using like language sorts of things. The easiest way will be like codes. I actually have the actual strings in here. I can just search on this, and it looks like we are in this settings dialog box, and it looks like we already have a pretty good structure here. So I'm just going to put this here. I'm just going to follow along. I think the markup is probably pretty important. Um, but look, and it looks like I'm using, this is very specific to Angular material, and I'm guessing that we are using reactive forms. So now we've left sort of vocabulary domain completely, and now we're into Angular material and Angular forms, reactive forms domain. And it is so important to make sure that in your brain you segregate that information so that you can, or categorize it, it's probably a better way, because like it is so easy to let these technologies sort of blend in with each other, and then it sort of really disadvantages you in the future. So what I'm just going to do is a quick check to see if I'm using reactive forms. I don't know if I'm using reactive forms, but yeah, I am using reactive forms, right? I'm pretty sure this means. Okay. I'm pretty sure that means I'm using reactive form. Okay, so I see this. Am using reactive forms. Okay, so yeah, that's what I thought. Sometimes a word will mean, like reactive forms might mean something, and that word reactive in general is a shit show in our whole um, industry. Like it can mean RxJS. It can mean so many. It can mean the Facebook um, framework React. It could just mean that it is React, like you, as you do stuff, other stuff happens. Like there is just, when you say reactive forms, there is absolutely almost no way to know what the listener thinks you mean by reactive forms. But I'm talking about a very, very specific set of um, set of libraries that I'm pulling in from Angular, called the reactive forms module. Yeah, that all those words are really screwed up. Now, I don't want to forget next week. I mean, I think this video is long enough and all that, but I'm just going to say grammars, grammars coming soon. And so what we decided today was that grammars, and I'm going to say pipe delimited, so as a reminder, because it's going to, like, this next Saturday when I'm working on this again, hopefully, it's going to feel, today's going to feel like a million years ago. I have a very exciting week ahead of me with work um, and and is that spelled right? Delimited. Um, I have just such a big week ahead of me that there's no way. This is going to seem like ancient past. Um, okay, so that is misspelled. So delim. So you would think that is how you spell it. Just with a D at the end. All right. So I probably had delimin. Oh, I didn't have the A in there. No, delimited. I don't know. I had some extra letters for some reason. But anyway, so that is what I will work on next Saturday. And I hope that, cancel. I hope that that is going to go really fast. Like I hope that, basically we're going to, I'm thinking that, I need to add a new, like in our new form control So these are called controls. These are form controls. Add a new control for um, a text area that is completely optional. Um, I don't think it needs any validators. They can put whatever they want in there. And then I'm literally going to just take it. If you put something screwed up in there, I'm just going to put it in there, which is kind of the point, right? Like if I wanted to say, if I wanted to see what screwy thing does to, whatever, you know, I don't need to be like massaging it. I just want to take exactly what they give me or exactly what I put in there and add it to the um, grammars list. So we talked a lot about we talked a lot about the domain of voice, human voice in general. We did also talked a lot about the web API voice. We also talked a lot about Angular or web API voice domain, and then we also talked a lot about the Angular domain, and then we talked about some subsections in the Angular domain. It's a lot. That's a lot of different pieces that you have to sort of be able to sort out. It's going to be tough to get there if that's something that you haven't quite conquered yet or figured out how to do in your head yet. But the thing that you should always keep in mind is it it does sort of, like, if that's something that you're capable of doing and something that you could train yourself to do, it does sort of differentiate you and make you a more valuable commodity in the whole sort of work industry world, you know. So anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.